I was on the second floor of this hospital, and I thought there were people outside throwing rocks at the window, and that there was going to be a truck that was going to drive through this door that wasn't even at the end of a hallway, and people were going to come kill me. That was the medicine. It had nothing to do with my regular childhood life. So those were kind of the darkest days. I was 2015. In time frame, I think it was around the spring or summer. And I remember asking the nurse, I said, that room right there, because there was no windows. It wound up being a janitor closet that had no windows in it. I'm like, can I sleep in there? She's like, what? And so every like 15 minutes, it's a psych ward. They walk by, but they make sure you're not like killing yourself in there. And I remember the shadow walking by the door. So I got up and took the pillowcase off. I was going to go James Bond. I wrapped it around my fists. And I was like, I'm going to get this person if they come in here. And it wound up being the nurse just checking on me. Like, oh, how are you?
That is Brian Smuda, this week on the Do It For Yourself podcast. Hey, my friend, how you doing? Welcome back to another episode here on the Do It For Yourself podcast. If this is your first time, I welcome you to the podcast. My name is Ian, and I am the host here of the Do It For Yourself podcast. And each week I have the opportunity to sit down with someone who is doing it for themselves. And my guest this week, Brian Smuda, he is definitely doing it for himself, and he has been for quite some time. But before we get into Brian's story, right up front, I just need to ask a quick favor of you, if you could, while you are listening to this podcast, whether you're at home getting some work done on the treadmill, maybe on the trainer, you're out for a walk, do me a quick favor and leave a review on Apple Podcast or whatever app it is that you are using to consume this podcast. That would help me out a ton. My guest this week is Brian Smuda, and Brian is the man behind Season Pass Sales. And I was linked up with Brian because I found a sticker while I was skiing at Mount Snow in Vermont. And when I saw this sticker, I immediately knew I needed to get it, but I couldn't quite figure out where it came from or what it was even an advertisement for. Long story short, I started following Season Pass Sales on Instagram, and I reached out to Season Pass Sales to see where I could get some stickers. And it turns out that they were actually made of Brian's face, and he said, I'd be happy to send you some. So I started poking around and started following Brian a little bit. And when I started to follow Brian, I also found his personal Instagram page. And so I started poking around there, and that led me to his website. And I started to dive into Brian's story, and it was a story that I knew nothing about. And as I began to dig deeper and deeper, I found that Brian had a very, very interesting story that I knew I needed to share here on the podcast. And so we do just that. And not only is he the person behind Season Pass Sales, but he's also the person behind the haircut book. And he is an advocate for the brain surgery that he went through and kind of linking people together to see if it's something that they could potentially benefit from. So I don't want to take anything else away from this story. I really want Brian to share this story with you. So without further ado, here is my episode with Brian Smuda.
All right, dude, let's get going.
Brian, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me on the podcast this evening. We'll talk about kind of how we got connected here in a second, but I appreciate you taking some time to come and hang out with me and jam about your story and what you're up to, and how you're doing it for yourself.
Absolutely appreciate the opportunity.
And so we were just literally just talking about it, but for the listeners, I've mentioned it a few times on the show, but um, I have recently got into skiing over the course of the last 2 or 3 seasons here, and this past season took my first real trip up to Mount Snow, which is in Vermont. And when I was up at the Summit Lodge grabbing a beverage, I noticed that there were all these stickers just plastered all over the place. And it's somebody's face with a mullet, and it's just this crazy looking sticker. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, man, I got to figure out how to get these. And so I start looking up the website, season pass sales. I start looking up B Smuda, and I can't find anything. I'm like, all right, well, and I kind of just let it go after that. And then I saw a video, and you were tagged in it through season pass sales, so I figured, you know what? Let me jump on. I'm going to send him a message. So, long story short, I not only got my stickers, but I also got a chance to meet you and find out a little bit about what you're up to. So, I'm really looking forward to sharing this journey here.
Appreciate it. Yeah, those I can't imagine what the stickers are on the mountain. I know they're plastered in many places. I mail them out quite often. I personally don't stick them at Mount Snow. Um, I've gotten messages before not to stick them there. Um, but no, I enjoy mailing those out and just helping out my clients. And basically, they become family and friends.
And some of the people at Mount Snow, from what you were saying, have also become family and friends for you as well.
Oh, certainly. Like my car is completely vinyl wrapped with the company business on there. The picture on the side, it's me skiing with my brother down Ridge, which is at Mount Snow. And just as I roll up, I'll hear, Smuda, or people honk and wave. And, before I even get out of the car, there's a buddy to ski with.
Yeah, that's gotta be an awesome feeling. It's gotta be an awesome feeling, and, unfortunately for you and for so many, during the time of this recording, we're in the midst of this coronavirus, and Mount Snow was shut down early, and that's just one of the, many resorts that were shut down very, very early this season. I mean, I'm sure you guys are definitely still skiing Mount Snow this time of year on any other year. So it's definitely unfortunate for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I was skiing Killington I think the week that they announced that the shutdowns were happening at the resorts, and I could see the mounds and piles of snow on Superstar waiting for spring skiing, the hero snow bumps that we all love. I was out there on their 200th day they were open last year, just skiing. It was beautiful, like almost 70-degree day.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. But before we get down the rabbit hole of skiing too far, I want to kind of unpack your story a little bit. Um, because as you were growing up, you were a child who was growing up with Tourette's, and as you were going through your younger years and into your school years, you never had a diagnosis of Tourette's. Like, you were the class clown. You were always joking with people, which obviously now, given the stickers and everything else, I can completely see that. But you said it was just kind of like an extended yawn. You were stretching out your face. There wasn't much going on. So, can you tell me a little bit about that time and aside from some of the things I just said, some of the stuff that you were going through?
Totally. So yeah, I think anybody that has Tourette's or even listening and hasn't exactly been diagnosed themselves, if you're in a crowd of people, just like a room, a classroom, and you have a moment where you realize nobody's looking at you or perhaps not watching you, that's the moment where you'll nod your head or twitch or whatever your unique twitch is. There's always audible Tourette's where people assume that you cuss or whatever, but there's things like vocal clearing where you just do that, or some people do have they the vocal Tourette's where they swear, and that's what always gets associated with Tourette's, and that's not really the whole creature itself. There's more to it. And the motor ticks for me, I remember being in the batter's box playing little league baseball, and I'd shake the helmet off my head sometimes.
And so did you have somewhat of a control over these ticks? Because you were saying, you kind of were able to wait until you realized that people weren't looking at you or weren't watching you. So were there points where you did have, control over this?
It's like building up. You ever have a joint or like a little bone pop like that you want to crack?
Mhm.
So it's like that built up pressure. If you know if it's there and you have to relieve it, you can hold it in to an extent. And then once you have that moment to twitch, you would do that. In the other case, just cracking your thumb or something, you can do nonchalantly. Um, but if you're sitting in a conversation, your mind doesn't focus on the twitch. It's more so on what's going on around you. But when you're just relaxing, that's when you would, find the twitch here or there.
And so it wasn't to the point where it would actually distract you from the conversation that you were having, it was the opposite. You could you could use the conversation to take your mind off of having this, I guess, urge, to do whatever it is that your tick is.
Correct. If like there's a conversation, if the mind is focused on, let's say driving or skiing on that topic there, my vision is in front of me. I'm focused on what turn I want to do, whether that's on the road or on the ski trail, and that really kind of takes your mind off of life mentally at that, on what twitches you're going to do, and your brain is just more focused on the conversation, your next physical movement that you want a controlled movement, opposed to a random arm flail or anything like that.
And would you say that that's why you got into things like skiing and cycling? Because those are things where you need to be focused on what you're doing, as opposed to something like baseball, where there can be a lot of downtime in baseball, especially if you're maybe the kid that's in the outfield, or you're not the person who is up to bat at that time. It's not something that can necessarily keep your attention the same way that some of these other sports can.
True, and I can see that being the case for some people with the condition. Um, Baseball, it's funny you say outfield. I was the center fielder and the pitcher all the time. Um, I would twitch. It didn't affect me at all, but I stopped the baseball. I started cycling in college as well as expanding my skiing in college when I got cut from the baseball team in freshman year tryouts. So growing up all the way through high school, good baseball player, and then I wasn't big enough, was the coach's excuse. So I was able to focus more of my time back in '04, '05 on skiing. And from there, I found so much fun, so much like literally freedom on the mountain. It's just fresh air blown down your face.
And I would say it's the same thing for cycling too. You know, it's fresh
Yeah,
air blowing in your face as you're ripping down the road.
and that's something I've gotten into more recent years than in the past when I had the 6 years of just really really poor health conditions of the dystonia or tardive dyskinesia, which kind of came in after the Tourette's. Um, that kept me off a bicycle because I couldn't really stay stable enough. I don't go mountain biking still because I don't want to hit a tree. I'll ski in the trees. I just don't have that stability on a bicycle yet.
And so you are getting into high school, you're playing sports. You start to think about college and what you're going to do after high school. You knew that you wanted to play baseball, but was baseball a deciding factor on where you were going to go to school? or did you have a plan outside of baseball?
Oh, I was by no means going pro, nor was that a deciding factor at all. I applied to 3 colleges, and luckily I got into all 3. But between ECSU, which is Eastern Connecticut, Springfield College, and Westfield State in Mass, the Springfield College coach and I were in talks to come up and play. Wasn't going to be a free ride or anything. I would just be on the team. And I ended up going over to Westfield because in my mind, I've just saved money on the cost of annual school pay, tuition there. And so I tried out, and I think it was the second day of tryouts. The coach calls my name. I was like, "What?" And I walked up to him because at that point I got into school for physical education, but prior to even my first day of courses, I switched to business management, and I'm not really sure exactly what that turning point was as to why I switched, but it worked out for the better half. And I asked the coach, said, "Dude, what's going on? You said my name." He's like, "Yep, you're too small." So at that point, I said, "All right." Baseball was like a fun little pickup game for me, and I was just enjoying college, enjoying meeting people and socializing and networking.
And I would have to imagine that although it was definitely a blow to not make the team, um, it seems like, and now hindsight, might be 2020, but it seems like it wasn't something that was completely detrimental for you at that point.
No, definitely. And whatever path we're given or try to pave ourselves kind of gets redirected all the time. Like you could plan something out in advance, and something else happens for the right reason. And not making the team, I think, was in my deck of cards that I wasn't seeing the next card that was being dealt, but it worked out to be a better card.
So you get into business management and you have no issues going through school. But as you're starting to come to the end, do you have any internships or anything lined up? And what was your plan kind of post college for getting into the business world?
I had nothing. I did commercial real estate for one summer, working down in Hartford, Connecticut, shirt and tie. Now imagine having a twitchy neck with your shirt buttoned all the way up wearing a tie. That was awful. Um, but I didn't like the whole vibe of the office scene. And then I did an internship with a record label that my college roommate owns, and that was fun. We got to travel the country, meet people, go to Warp Tour, go to a different city every day, and just keep networking and meeting people. And that kind of I liked that scene of business more than I did. Hey, you're 9 to 5 sitting in an office and listening to a boss and just not really doing what you enjoy in life.
And this was also around the time in 2005 where you launched a business, but it didn't really have a name yet, and you were kinda just out there, selling season passes, so let's get into that a little bit. This was the very, very early days of what has now become seasonpasssales.com, but we've talked about how you're a skier and how as you grew up, you continued to develop your skiing, but how does this rudimentary business start off, and what were you doing when you first started?
I was doing what so in college, oftentimes you're able to buy a discounted pass because you have a transcript that you can prove that you're a college student. And I signed up with the American Skiing Company, which Mount Snow was part of. They had a bunch of resorts actually across the country at the time, and that pass was a cost. It was like $279, but you could get it for 249 if you bought it through myself. And I was selling it at Westfield State, but I saw the opportunity as well to. I said, "Crap, we've got Springfield College, Winnick, Smith College, AIC. I've got 8 colleges in a 30-minute drive." So I was driving around to campuses, hanging flyers up, and between the flyers, MySpace, that was the original social media website for the young kids
Whoa.
watching, and So that, like, just doing things that were different and original, I think kind of started getting some traction. And over the years, I never really care for how many followers I have or how many likes I get. Um, that's that's not really what I'm going for. I'm going for that personal connection. If a customer calls me up or messages me saying, "Hey, let's ski," I'm normally available or try making the time. If I had 10,000 or 100,000 followers, that'd be a little difficult. But it just keeps me occupied.
And so, I want to try and understand this a little bit more. So, as a college student, you get a discounted pass, and they still do this today. Like, I was on the Epic Pass website trying to figure out what pass I want to get for next year, and they still have the option as a college student to get the pass. So, were students able to purchase a student pass like through you, and it was still the same price, but you were basically just marketing this discounted price to people who were your age, who were in school, who also enjoyed skiing?
You just dated myself, man. No, so yes, I do market to the college market, the adult market, and the youth, the six and under as well, are 12 to 18. So it is expanded certainly from just the college age kids to mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, the kid that's in elementary school. And you mentioned you were looking at your Epic Pass there. On our website here, season pass sales, I take a lot of time to actually go through their website, extract the information. How long did it take you, for example, to find your pass, the college pass you're looking for on their website,
Oh, no.
roughly?
No, no, no. So what I was saying was, like, I was going on their website to just figure out what pass I was gonna get. I can't get the college pass. I'm not a college student either. So
Okay.
I have to get the regular pass. But what I was asking was, like, when you started season pass sales and you yourself, you were in college and you were going around to these other colleges, um, were you basically just marketing for these ski resorts to get other college students like yourself at the time to purchase this pass? Like, is that how it started?
Yeah. So when I signed up to be the a sales rep per se for the mountains, I was working for a free season pass. At the time was, let's say, sell 10 or 15 passes, you get to ski for free,
Mhm.
and hooray, you save 250 bucks in your pocket there. Um, but at the same time, I was able to offers a college student something that they might not be aware of, because the year before they were in high school, mom and dad might not have brought them out to the big resorts. They might have thought something would be so expensive that was actually really affordable. And my freshman year, when I was approached by a season pass, I was like, how much? Wow, yes, please take my money. And I pursued that to wind up, selling the passes on my own and offering to kids and kind of introducing them to a sport that I love so much.
Okay, okay, and so you signed on, like, as a sales rep for the mountain to and the resorts, um, to get this information out to fellow students.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, got it, got it. So then now this is much, much more. And this is going on. Um, last year you were working with Peak Resorts who came in and bought up my what I call home mountain, which is in PA, which is Round Top, and it was part of just a three mountain family, and that got bought out and was then part of Peak Resorts who came in and they owned the Mount Snow, and they owned a couple mountains in New Hampshire. And then that has now gone on and become Epic, and they were just bought out. Peak Resorts was bought out by Epic, which is, now part of Vail Resorts. And it's all super, super confusing. And so that's where you come in because you have all of this information listed on your website and you actually have the passes side by side, which is super easy to figure out. Like, okay, this pass has access to these mountains on these dates and such and such. So, how did we get from what you were doing in college to, where we are today as far as season pass goes?
You nail it right in the head. The passes are all laid out for you right there. It's a convenient one-stop shop. Um, you know, most passes that people would be shopping are available, and the way they're laid out and the way I thought of it was just make it simple, make it fast, make it easy, and that a customer would want to return or refer a friend. And from that part, it just started growing and kind of, no pun intended, once a snowball gets rolling, it gets bigger. And the pass offering started, getting larger and having a variety of passes ranging from the most affordable one, the Indie Pass. You get, 94 days on the mountain for $200 when you buy that early season. And there's so much going on in the ski world that people don't know about until you actually do a little bit of digging. There's so many day ticket buyers that don't really ski enough to think that a season pass is worthwhile. But in the long run, if you do 4 days out of the year with a family of four, you're spending more than you would have on a season pass.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane these days, some of these season passes versus, day tickets. I think to ski at Mount Snow, a day pass is like $108, I want to say, just if you walk up to the ticket window and buy the pass that day. Um, and if you buy, which at the time last year was the Peak Pass, just the regular Peak Pass, I believe it was like $750 or something like that, maybe 700 flat. But if you go and ski, 5 days at Vermont, that's $500 right there. It's over $500. So you don't
Totally.
really need to ski all that much to get your money back. And then on top of that, all the skiing you do after that, you're basically skiing for free.
Absolutely. And the pass sales across the industry have gone up tremendously over the years. Epic Pass as a whole sold just over 1 million, and between the Epic and the Icon, the two air quote mega passes, they had just under 2 million of those sell. I'll say worldwide because they are international passes this year
Mhm.
alone. And I'm looking right here, Epic Day Pass. You can choose how many days, up to 7, you want to do. Now, Vail Resorts in Colorado is about 200 plus, low 200s for one day. But if you choose 3 days right now, preseason for next year, it's $369. And just one day in advance is 129, but that gives you the access to any of those resorts. And Mount Snow's prices will most likely go up next year. This year, they were still under the Peak Resorts options of pricing.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. And I mean, I will say I almost completely missed a tier of passes because of how confusing the Epic website can be. And so when I was looking at it, there's the Epic Northeast Pass, and then there's like the Big Daddy Epic Pass that costs like almost a grand. And
Yep.
I thought those were the only two options.
Those are the
And
only ones they advertise on their website. It's like their homepage says you got this option or that option, or you can spend 15 minutes to dig through it and find one. Like, you've got 30 different passes you can choose from.
yeah, and there's a pass that is in between that Epic Northeast and that top tier pass that's a little bit more affordable. I think it's like 729, where, Mount Snow isn't blacked out at Christmas. Okemo is, but you still get access to all these great resorts, and the benefits are a little bit better, and it's cheaper than, the top dog, but it's a little bit more expensive than that basic pass, but, it just they make it all so confusing to find, and I can see how you have built a business because you make the information available to people, you make it easy, and then it's linked right from your website. You link it to where you can go and purchase the pass.
It's going directly. If you're clicking, you're describing right now the Epic Local Pass. If that's what you click on, I'm not just going to send you to the home page, because then you have to get lost in this, world wide web of a website, and then you'll have to find it yourself. But like you said, there's unrestricted access to a whole bunch of resorts. A few are blacked out, and right now that's only price wise. on their site, an adult is 729. That's what the Explorer Pass I think you might have had last year was
Yep.
for the peak resorts.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, you get access to I think just with that pass alone, now you get access to Okemo, which is blacked out at Christmas, but you also get access to Breckenridge Resort. And I looked up the prices for Breckenridge, and it's like
Yeah,
125 or more to ski there just for the day. So I mean, it's definitely convenient to have all this information in one place. But my question is now, how do you make money from running seasonpasssales.com? And you don't have to give me like, the ins and outs and numbers or anything, but how has this now become a business for you to, get people to, they're not buying their pass through you. They're basically just getting information from you.
totally. And I'm an info provider for that, and web traffic and click throughs are enough to keep me busy and employed. More so if it's just keeping me busy and my mind off of my physical health or mental health, that's more important to me than $100 coming in for whatever. Or if I'm making money and it's just enough to support me, I'm happy with that. The quote "just enough" flies by quite often for me, but it's offering something that is still that I love.
And so I do want to take a little bit of a step back to, we're taking a step back, but kind of a step forward from where we originally started. So we started talking about season pass sales and how it started in 2005. You were then getting ready to graduate in 2008, and you're getting ready to enter into the world of business and this, this grown up world. And you didn't want to have these ticks while you were going into this kind of new world, this new business, this venture. Um, so what did you kind of approach your parents with at this point in your life?
Totally. So my parents, they were aware I had Tourette's, and in 2008, I was entering the business world. I wasn't sure what I was going to do professionally. Every kid grows up, and my brother's a lawyer, for example. I'm the ski bum now, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I worked in a ski shop, but at the same time, I didn't want to have these motor ticks in the event that I was going to go work some real corporate job. um, and in my mind, the ticks were, affecting me, but reality was they weren't even very noticeable. But over the 4-year period of being on those Tourette's medicine or medications from 2008 through 2012, at some point I started getting anxiety in June of 2012. And that's when the horrifying medicines came into play, the antipsychotics to offset anxiety.
And were you taking the medication for the Tourette's and the antipsychotics at the same time?
No, some of them overlap because the to get into like a medical podcast here, the dopamine levels in my brain are a little bit higher. Now they're nonstop, like put out dopamine. So that's what would cause my movements to flare up or, be uncontrollable, prior to brain surgery, which I think I just cracked an egg that we shouldn't talk about yet. But so the medicine I was on originally for the Tourette's was more just to control the involuntary movements. And then they have some medicines that will attack that as well as anxiety. And right off the bat, the first medicine I was on wasn't working. My twitches were getting worse, and the doctors didn't know the word dystonia or what dystonia was. They didn't even, put that into consideration. And they kept giving me medicines, and it worsened my anxiety, worsened my Tourette's. And I just thought, with Tourette's, it can just start up. If you're 33, you can wake up one day and have Tourette's, or you can wake up and it could go away. And unfortunately, that's kind of what the doctors were thinking, is that, oh, you're getting older, your Tourette's is getting worse, but you're also getting more anxiety. So continue taking this pill, that pill, higher dosage in this one, higher than that one. And it was like playing tennis. We're all over the place just with whatever medicine they'd throw at me. But doctors know best in my mind, so I had to take them.
And did you feel like your anxiety was building, not knowing how to fix this, or being in a position where you were taking the medication and it almost seemed like it wasn't getting better? Like the anxiety maybe would have gotten a little bit better, but then the tics got worse, or,
Oh,
vice versa?
day to day, like, or day after day, I should say. If you're taking, even if you're just taking an aspirin, well, you shouldn't take that once a day. But if you're taking a daily medicine, no matter your condition, every time you take that pill and swallow it, you're kind of reminded, I have a condition. I have this. I have this. Now, if you're taking a pill 3 times a day or multiple pills twice, 3 times a day, that's 2 or 3 times a day that you're mentally reminding yourself, kind of beating yourself up in your head that, wow, I have anxiety. I have to take this medicine, or I have Tourette's. I have to take this medicine. And every day that was a little bit of a battle that kept building up and getting worse in my mind.
Do you think that this built up at the time that it did because you started taking the medication and that's what was happening? Because when
Yeah,
you were in, middle school, high school, and in that time in your life, even through college, you were just a class clown and there wasn't really any attention that was called to it. But like you just said, you have to take this medication now, and that's calling attention to what's going on.
absolutely. And it was the medication, the mental aspect of taking it was one thing. But the main thing that really, screwed with me, keep this G-rated for everybody, it was the first medicine I was on for the antipsychotic slash movement disorder. They used to actually torture inmates in Guantanamo Bay with this medicine, and they would inject them until they started getting pretty much psychotic and saying, "Hey, we want to raid your country and blow up this town." And whatever they did with the inmate at that point, they were let go or killed. But that's still on the market today. That medicine, and I have notes as well that give you basically know each medicine. The doctor would note this. You got this as a side effect. This was now a new side effect, and that was 11 medicines of side effects led to the tardive dyskinesia that I have now.
So let's get into that. And by the way, you don't have to keep it G-rated on this show. We are far
Uh,
from it. So if you have to, I don't censor people at all. So please, whatever happens, happens.
hey, well,
But
I got Tourette's, now I get to swear, right?
exactly, exactly. So you start, you're going down this path of taking all these medications, and things start to get worse. And I was watching some of the videos on your website, and I'm have to assume that you put them out there for people to, one, understand what it was that you were going through, but also you put it out there as a lighthouse for people to see, if somebody comes across it and they're going through something similar, they don't have to feel like they are the only one who is going through something like this. So, in the darkest points of this, what were some of the things that you were going through both mentally and physically?
Well, the darkest days, I was in the psych ward for the better half of a week. And I don't really remember it. I mean, I remember thinking that people were throwing. I was on the second floor of this hospital, and I thought there were people outside throwing rocks at the window, and that there was going to be a truck that was going to drive through this door that wasn't even at the end of a hallway, and people were going to come kill me. That was the medicine. That had nothing to do with my regular childhood life. So those were kind of the darkest days. I was 2015. In time frame, I think it was around the spring or summer. And I remember asking the nurse, I said, that room right there, because there was no windows. It wound up being a janitor closet that had no windows in it. I'm like, can I sleep in there? She's like, what? And so every like 15 minutes, it's a psych ward. They walk by, but they make sure you're not like killing yourself in there. And I remember the shadow walking by the door. So I got up and took the pillowcase off. I was going to go James Bond. I wrapped it around my fists. And I was like, I'm going to get this person if they come in here. And it wound up being the nurse just checking on me, like, oh, how are you? But your mind wasn't there because, you're so just fucked up on medicine.
And so when you get out of the psych ward, what do you start to do? Or do you start to explore different options? Do you start to look this up more? I mean, now it's 2015, we're in the world of the internet where we have access to so many things that we didn't have access to before. I mean, even in 2008, we had the access, but by the time 2015 rolled around, we had access to a lot of different stuff on the internet, which can be a blessing and a curse all at the same time. So, do you start to look stuff up and start to do some research and some digging to really kind of figure out what's going on?
I tried a little bit. I'm lucky enough my mom was here. She before she passed, she was, trying every day to get my life to be better. But it was a curse and a blessing that she passed in 2017. So she didn't get to see my condition in its worst. But up until the point she couldn't provide anymore, she was hunting, she was looking, she was calling the doctors. And in 2015, when I got out of the psych ward, I was lucky enough to be still covered under Massachusetts health insurance. And I got into Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Mass. And that was the first doctor to look at me. I walked and he noted dystonic postures and like words I can't pronounce. Maybe I can send you an image or something for the link itself for this audio, but like rectilioliosis or something of the arms, basically flaring of the limbs. And it was the definition of dystonia, but without saying you have dystonia. But it was medically induced, which is tardive dyskinesia, which nobody's heard of unless you're living with it. And there's a pretty large online community nowadays, but there wasn't that back in 2008, and there wasn't that in 2015, where you could type something in, and you know Facebook now has groups where you can connect with, unfortunately, thousands of people, but at the same time, it's fortunate for them that there's myself and other people that are being transparent about it. And I'm really more impacted on a day-to-day basis by the people that approach me and say, Brian, how did you get by 6 years like this? I have a shaky hand and I can't deal with it. I'm like, I try not comparing anything in life, because once you compare, you differentiate yourself. I'm not going to say he's tall, I'm short, she's white, or no. It's There's nothing that's gonna make any of those two people feel better once you assume or differentiate and compare. Kind of on a rant here, but people reach out and they'll say, "Hey, how did you do this? What do you recommend?" And I'll link them up with the doctor in their area, or give them whatever recommendation I can to the best of my ability.
Okay. All right. So now you're starting to, you get into Boston, Mass. You're starting to get a doctor that's really looking at the whole picture. And when does the topic of your brain surgery come into the picture?
3 years later, it was
And
not even brought up. Yeah.
I was going to say, why is that?
Because they didn't know. There, even today, and it's funny we're doing this conversation today. March 25th is National Dystonia Advocacy Day. I was supposed to be down on Capitol Hill talking to the Senate and Congress, as an advocate for dystonia. And basically, there's not enough money and funding and research out there that can walk into 10 out of 10 doctors and they can diagnose you. You have a better chance of walking in, your doctor telling you have herpes, than you do tardive dyskinesia, because it's more common and people know about it.
So that's, I mean, still a long time from the time that you started seeing this doctor and they started to pick up what was going on, but what were some of the things that they had you doing, or some of the, I guess, I don't even know if it would be precautions, but maybe attempts that they went through with you to try and help?
Totally. So when I was in Boston, I've got my Instagram loaded up here. All my social media is just called the Haircut Book. Why the Haircut Book? Because they had to cut my hair when I had the brain surgery. Um, so to go down four medicines in, maybe to the fifth one here. I was halfway through. So 2015 was about halfway point between obviously 2012 and 2018. And the doctor in Boston was really on the right track. He ended up getting me onto a medicine that it at the time was allowed by the FDA somehow. It came in from Canada and the price was outrageous. Somehow the insurance covered it. But I was on that for about a year and a half. It's called tetrabenazine, and that medication was helping with the dystonic postures and tics. But I got a phone call in December of 2017 saying, "Hey, Brian, I'm down in Florida at the time. This is so and so from XYZ Pharmaceutical. You're no longer allowed on tetrabenazine." So I put up you know an argument on the phone to say why, and basically she explained that it's only for Huntington's disease now, and I was, kind of upset about that. And she wanted me to cold turkey it. And no, she just works at the pharmaceutical company. I said, I need one more bottle to at least wean off of this, please.
Mhm.
So I was able to get that, but that medicine actually did help quite a bit. That was the only medicine over 11 years that helps with the twitches, which lowered my anxiety because I wasn't on some stupid medicine. I had a good doctor that gave me good medicine.
So you start to, you start unfortunately, you start to wean yourself off of this medication, and obviously, I'm sure, we don't need to put this out there, but at the same time, we do need to put this out there. This was all under the direction of a doctor. It's not like you were doing this on your own, but you start to wean yourself off of this medication. And what is the next step that you take, or is there another medication that they were able to switch you over to?
So Valium, what would that be called? A little meds right here. They would call that diazepam or Valium. I was on it 45 milligrams a day. That's enough to knock out a horse, I think.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and the medication dosages, I had that post on that Instagram page. Some of them, my doctor at one point was like, "Yes, that was the actual quote from him." He's like, "That's enough to knock out a horse." But between, let's call it January now, because that phone call came, I think late December of 17. So you got January through June. I was on nothing but Valium pretty much because that was the constant. That was, the constant in the science equation. To go back to my high school days, biology or whatever. Um, so over that 6 month period until June, I was just fucking losing hope. I had my medical marijuana card. That gave me absolutely no relief. People would say, "Oh, try indica. Did you try CBD oil? Did you try this?" I went from CBD oil to flower, vape pens to dry flower to live resin, shattered dabs, Rick Simpson oil, if that's what it's called. I'm not a big stoner. I don't smoke anymore. But I tried everything and nothing gave me any sort of relief. And one day I drove over to the doctor's office, and this doctor, he's kind of like a psychiatrist for me, not a shrink, but I would go to him, every couple months. And he actually diagnosed one of his best friends a decade prior with Parkinson's disease and said, "You need to go get deep brain stimulation," to his friend. And that's what he told me that day. I drove in early June. And so I get home. Actually, my father came down to that meeting randomly. And, he comes into the doctor's office, sits down with us. And we went. And my father, because I couldn't even hold the phone to my face at the time, my body was moving around so much. If I had it on speakerphone, he wouldn't be able to hear me because I was moving away from the phone so much. So my father calls up Hartford Hospital, the Chase Family Movement Disorder Center, which focused on Parkinson's disease and a little bit on dystonia. And they said they could get me in for January. Keep in mind it's June. Um, so I went through all the tests in a matter of a month. My doctor talked to that doctor. They're friends, luckily, and I was able to get in about a 2 week period, get all the tests done over 3 weeks. And then June 26th, I got the approval for brain surgery. Or no, that's when I heard I was going to have brain surgery. And then you go through all the tests. And then August 2nd, I had the brain implants put in. And there was a follow up appointment on my birthday, August 28th. They had the battery pack put in my chest. And from there, they started doing the programming starting August 31st. And I'm now on my second battery. I can get into that.
Yeah, so I saw the battery pack and it looks almost identical to a pacemaker. It's, kind of just subdermal, right? Like in your chest area. Looks like it would be in, almost in the exact same place that a pacemaker would be. I guess theoretically it's very similar to a pacemaker. But you have two sets of implants. You have the battery that's implanted in your chest, but you also have literal implants in your brain.
Correct. And I've got some some X-ray photos of those, which are really neat. So each of those leads, each brain implant is called the lead. And I have a Medtronic system, which has 4 contact points. And each one of those contact points takes from the battery slash computer unit in my chest, sends through the cables that are wired through my neck up to those 2 implants. It sends different information such as voltage, pulse, um, amplitude, and impedance. And they're vertically inserted, in those 4 contact points are right in the GPI, which is where the dopamine receptors are. And for me, it's kind of like a flood. There's no dam there, just constant overflow of dopamine. And that's what those two implants are in there to basically shut off the dopamine receptors to a certain extent.
So just as you're leading up to this, did you know leading into the surgery what all was going to happen and what exactly they were going to be doing? I would imagine you had to.
I did, and so this was the only thing I think I was ever pessimistic about my whole life, because I didn't want to give up any hope that I'm going to have the surgery and it's going to be great. They described to me what would happen. I paid attention more in this than I did any, class ever, I think. And I learned that if it works, there could be a 40% improvement. It could be 90%. The chance of it being 80 or 90%, luckily I got that one, is a lot slimmer. Most people that have the brain surgery, um, and it takes a lot to do with the programming settings over, the months to follow. And even still, I get mine adjusted from time to time. But I had 3 options. I have the brain surgery on August 2nd. They put you under, they drill in, they actually, when they were wheeling me in, I asked them if I could keep my skull as they cut it open. I thought they'd drill in, but they kind of turn it into dust to get into the brain. So they go in with like a little saw or whatever the heck it was. So I was completely under. Most patients are going to be awake for it, but mildly to heavily sedated. This way, you can still talk to the doctors, and the doctors can, make sure they're in the right spots. But I was so twitchy that I would have broke. I call it the shark cage, what your head gets mounted in, one of those metal cages. And the 3 options were: I have the surgery, it works. That's what I got. I have the surgery, it doesn't work, or I have the surgery and I don't wake up. I would have taken option 1 or option 3. I would not have liked option number 2 at all. I'd rather, have the surgery, give it my best shot, and die in the bed, or have the surgery and have it work and be able to get my life back.
And it was enough of a risk for you to have one of those two outcomes. You going in were completely okay with options 1 or option 3.
Absolutely. I don't think the only time I cried before it with the realization that I could die is when I had to sign like the paperwork, the agreement to say you could die. There was like 5 or 6 things I had to just initial. The last one was you might not wake up from this. I'm like, oh wow, wow, okay. There's a tearjerker. But other than that, it was my last opportunity. Pretty much, we had tried every medicine. I got pulled off of the only medicine in 6 years that had actually worked for me, and it was just it. It was at the time and still is the only opportunity that I had to. I don't think I ever would have killed myself, and that's a topic that goes around our community of dystonia and you know TD, tardive dyskinesia, because it is a battle, mentally, physically, socially. A lot of people will wind up hibernating at home. There's somebody posted online in our support group on Facebook saying, "Hey, does anybody else feel this coronavirus thing is really good because we don't have to go out in public?" And they were right, but I didn't like that they had some of the image they had for their meme there, and there's some guy hanging himself. And a lot of us that have this condition, for me, that's a fear. That's an anxiety striker right there. Is just the thought of suicide. Like, I'm living a happy-go-lucky life right now, but when you're down in the dumps, you want to have a high moment that you can lift up, just lift yourself up upon, to remember that moment and get back in good spirits.
And do you share your story now for those reasons to let people know that, maybe it's not that they need brain surgery, but just to give them a glimmer of hope that there is a way out of this, for one, or there is an option. There are things that you can pursue that you can get your life back.
Absolutely. And so when I bought the website and registered all the social media accounts for the haircut buck, it was even before the brain surgery. Just let me go back here. July 27th is when I registered the website. And again, I had the brain surgery August 2nd. So I'm assuming that's 5 or 6 days before. I knew I wanted to be transparent. I wanted to inform, educate, and help other people. And maybe that's why I switched to business, because I'm, in one sense, selling myself and selling my story to better somebody else's life, which gives me more purpose than selling the season pass.
I can completely see that. I can completely see that. And it's interesting now because before we even started this conversation, obviously, I had no clue that you went through any of this. And I was just sitting around one night and you had tagged your personal page through a post on the season pass page. And so I started poking around and I was like, oh, let me see what Brian's up to. And then I started surfing through some of your posts on there, which led me to your website, which led me to, so I now looking back, I can completely see how that could really, really help you to share this. And it means so much more to you to share this story and to impact people through doing this as opposed to season pass sales, even though season pass sales is, what pays your bills.
And it's fun to be able to incorporate both of them, because as Ryan, you mentioned him up at the Till I Die, the collective up at Killington. He described me as an industry character, which is cool. People look at me in the ski industry as, if I don't dress up in the purple one piece, the mullet wig, and the headband, the moon boots, people generally won't recognize me. So I can go incognito, but the regular, my quote family up there will still call me out if I'm wearing a spider jacket or whatever. And but being able to use that personality and have fun in public, and people realize what I had a year and a half prior, is tremendous, because they look at it and say, wow, my life really doesn't suck. I stubbed my toe, or yeah, I broke my leg last fall. Breaking your leg's one thing. It's not as not yeah, I'm going to compare that. Breaking a leg sucks probably, but it's nothing compared to living 6 years with TD and everything that leads up to it there and after. And I actually was able to ski. I only did one run in 2000 to open the day. My 5th year straight of opening the season, first chair of the year at Mount Snow. 86 days after brain surgery. That's like that's less time than a warranty period on most electronics.
Which you now have in your body. So you said you're on your second battery. Was that a warranty issue, or what happened with that? We gotta get that story.
Totally. So this will be some mind-blowing info for you and the listeners. So this whole system was designed for Parkinson's disease patients. So Medtronic, Boston Scientific, Abbott, there's three manufacturers of these implants. I went with the Medtronic system, and the original battery should last about three or 5 years within that range, based upon their average settings and their it's FDA approved for Parkinson's. It's not for um, tardive dyskinesia or dystonia, which is unfortunate. But so they run at 3 volts max. You got two implants. One could be at like zero point 0.8, the other could be at zero point 0.8 or like 1.2. They're at about 3 volts, and their twitches and Parkinson's, for those who don't know, think of Michael J. Fox out there. He's kind of the face of Parkinson's, as I would love to be the face of tardive dyskinesia. And I, fingers crossed, you're not jinxing. I think, and if I can pave a path down the future, I'd love to be there. But I drained the battery in 8 months because I'm running at 11.6 volts on a 12-volt battery.
So you've got this thing pretty much maxed out.
Yeah, and there's adjustments they can do if they lower the voltage, they can adjust the amplitude that and the frequency and the impedance. So there's different things. Most people that have or will get the brain surgery are not going to be on the level of battery output that I'm on. But the battery I have now it's a little bit slimmer. Actually, I'd say it's a lot slimmer than the original one, and it's rechargeable. So every few days, I just have to, recharge it.
And how does that work?
So I love telling people. I'm going to tell you up front. This part is a joke, which I should have told you after I tell it. But this is what I tell people when they ask it, because normally people say, "Hey, you're on drugs? You're on coke, molly, meth, exit, like whatever." There's 5 drugs, but I go. So when I got the battery pack, they gave me a ceramic nipple. I unscrew that and I hook up to a micro USB port. But the coolest part about it is that I get free 5G Wi-Fi. And at that point, the person's like pulling their phone out looking for the hotspot, and I'm like, "You're an idiot." But people just don't understand. It's just a fun way to have fun with the situation, and it's kind of like, I guess, charging an iPhone on one of those wireless devices. So I have the battery is in my right pec, and I got to keep it shaved. Just gives me a reason to shave my chest. There's a sticky adhesive pad that goes on there holding the charging unit. So there's a receiver that gets kind of stuck to the chest, and it can take 4 hours to 6 or 7 hours based upon how much charge it needs to get through to fill back up. And it it's almost it sucks because you gotta every for myself it's every 3 days. If I don't recharge, I'll probably be down. I lose 25% of battery a day.
Mhm.
So I just got to recharge more often than other people. But it's a pain in the ass to sleep on, because imagine sleeping on something 2.5 times the thickness of your iPhone.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing that, but at least, hey, listen, it's better than the alternative, right?
Yeah, because the alternative being I would have had to keep that original battery and get it replaced every 8 months. But actually, when they replaced it, I had said that was in May, February, March. Yeah. So in May of 2018, whatever year that was, I have to look back. Yeah, last winter. So 2018-19. So 2019 in May, they replaced the battery. 4 days later, I went up to Killington and skied. I had the stitches. I was skiing in my bathing suit, shirtless, just having a good time. And I called my doctor and I said, "Look, I'm going skiing." And they basically just said, "All right, just make sure you don't, tear the stitches open." So I didn't fall and had a good time.
Through this course of getting your life back, what has been the 1 to 3 things that have brought you the most joy or satisfaction?
One, being able to help others in a way that I've experienced. So to kind of share my story in any way that's helping another person. Two is I got my health back where I don't have to have my father fold toilet paper and leave a couple, strips out for me because I literally couldn't put my hands together to fold toilet paper and rip it. Brushing my teeth, I used to break my toothbrush because I would push too hard against my teeth and would crack the plastic. So um, I hate the word normal and I hate the word disability or disabled. But I was almost, let's say, disabled, but I'm handy capable now. I could have a handicap placard. I don't want one. I'd rather let the person that has no limbs in a wheelchair park in that spot. And then number three, the future. I still have a future now.
And playing off of that, one of the kind of last questions that I always like to ask my guests is, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who is considering getting a brain surgery or considering going to their doctor to kind of explore some different options, or even someone who has been sitting on the couch and not paying attention to their nutrition, not being physically active, but they want to start getting active. What is something that you have learned, some piece of advice that you could pass on to them to help them get started and take that first step into doing what it is that they want to do and do it for themselves?
That is a great question, great topic. And it's gonna it the word motivation is overly that's too overused. Yes, you need to motivate yourself, but you have to have just a goal. My goal is to stay active. If I sit in bed, I'm going to bed. If you get off your bed or off the couch, turn the TV off. If you have a bicycle, if you have a pogo stick, or whatever, if you want to just go for a walk, go walk with your neighbor. That will lead to a run by yourself. That run will lead to a hike, maybe with a loved one or a friend or even by yourself. These small little steps, and that's exactly what it is. It's small steps that lead up to being able to do something. And, if you want to be the best at something, you don't just wake up the next morning and you're there. You have to work and make progress at it.
I agree with what you said there 100%. I also agree that motivation is something that is overused, and I think it's a term that's overused, and it's a term that people don't use properly, right? So people get motivated. You can watch motivational videos all day long, but how long does that motivation last? Sometimes it lasts a couple days, sometimes it lasts only a couple hours. Maybe if it was something really good and it's something that you get really jazzed about, it could last a couple months. But after the motivation wears off, you got to find something that's going to keep you going. And I think that that's when the small steps comes into play as well, because when you start to build off of those small steps, you get that snowball rolling down the hill, exactly like you said. And once that snowball starts rolling and you start to have progress and you start to see changes, whether it be weight loss, your health, mentally, physically, it doesn't matter. Like once you start to see the changes, that's when you really start to get going. So, the last thing that I want for you to do is, I know that you have multiple different social media outlets that you're posting on and keeping up with, but give everybody where they can find you on whatever socials it is that you want to use.
Sure. Well, we had three topics: myself, my business, and my purpose here. I'd rather have people just follow me on, I guess, B Smuda, which is B as in Brian, and then Smuda, Smuda, and that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Um, I'm not living in Minnesota. There is a Brian Smuda out there if you Google search it, but that one will link up to everything else. You can find the haircut book on there. You can find season pass sales, and just a little touch here as well. Topic of motivation. And that sticker that you found me from had a crazy face mullet. The reality behind that image is you can portray and have a fun life and live and enjoy things, but each day or when you need to focus and be serious, you can still be serious, which is kind of that what the mullet mentality of party in the back and business up front. So when I do motivational speaking, inspirational speaking, and just trying to engage with students, businesses, clubs, whoever it be, just to inspire and encourage someone to either push for another day or try something different, new, unique. I want them to realize you can, like a mullet, be serious and focus on that, but at the same time, you can break out of that and go adventure, go hike, go have fun. You don't need to be one thing all the time.
Well, Brian, I just want to say thank you so much for sitting down and jamming with me for a while this evening. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm really looking forward to sharing this with the people, and I really wish you the continued success that you are having.
Much appreciated.
So that is it. That is my interview with Brian Smuda. And if you came from the season pass sales page, I want to know, did you have any idea that the person behind that had such an amazing story? I was blown away when I learned about this, and I knew that I needed to share it because, like I said, I got connected with Brian, and I loved his enthusiasm and everything about him and his attitude and his outlook. And I had no idea the place that he had come from. And so to me, it was very important to share his story, to get it out there and show everyone the person behind season pass sales, but also share the amazing story that Brian has. So I thank you so much for hanging out with us. I thank Brian for coming on and sharing his story. And I hope that you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. If you think of it, do me a favor, leave a review on whatever app it is that you are using to consume this podcast. It's something that is going to help me out tremendously with growing this show, and it only takes a minute to do, so I would really, really appreciate that. That's it. That's all I have for you this week. I hope that you come back for the next episode. We have some very exciting guests coming up, and I look forward to sharing more amazing stories.
And it's Yui.
So, all right, I'll give you that story, and this might be on the outtakes of the podcast, but here's
All
the thing.
right.
So, I have a group of friends that I've been friends with since I was in high school, okay? And that name came from when I was in high school. So, I was on the lacrosse team, and some guy, he was a senior, he turned around and he was like, "Hey, Eugene." And I'm walking along, I'm a freshman on the team, and I turn around and I'm like, "What? Who the hell is he talking to?" And he looks at me, he's like, "That's your name, right?" And the dude's a senior, he's like 6 foot tall, he's huge. I'm like, "Yep. Yep, that's me." So then ever since then, it stuck. It got shortened to Yui, but there's only a very select few, of my friends that call me that, and a lot of people can't pronounce it. It throws them off 'cause it looks like Huey, but it's not. There's no H, it's with an E, so it just really throws people off. So that is not my real name. My real name is Ian. But that's what people call me, and I my personal Instagram page is listed under that. So that's the reasoning behind it. But nobody on the podcast has ever heard that story. So there you go. There might be some insider info going on.
Perfect, perfect. And now they know how to pronounce it as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Cool, man. All right. Thank you.
Cool. I appreciate it. If anybody has questions or anything, just thehaircutbook.com or, any social media, they can start at B Smuda.
Awesome.